Your approach is very specific and wonderful, and I think it speaks volumes about the grace, the graciousness of the grace of the gospel. There are others in this struggle, Christians who struggle at a different level and a different style in the political atmosphere in Washington, for example, and the whole thing of the Tea Party, the vote, right now our electoral politics and so on. Do you feel there's a place for that kind of struggle as well, and that kind of style, very different from your ironic, peaceful style?
Well, it's peaceful toward people because that's who Jesus is, but it is violent toward the devil. Mm-hmm. Jesus said that in terms of the kingdom of God suffers violence in his coming, and we take it by force. Take it by force from the devil, who has come to kill, maim, and destroy. So if we're ministering toward people, we can't do it unless we know the spiritual warfare is there. So let me go to your question here. Based on loving our neighbors as ourselves, we did a publication, the Hartford Current, and we're going to make this national. It is called the Ministers Affirmation on Marriage. And anyone who wants to read this, ministersaffirmation.org. And we have put forth an argument there that nobody on the same-sex marriage side of the debate has publicly been willing to challenge. We talk about unalienable rights coming from the Creator, who gives man and woman a marriage, and no society in all of human history that approves of homosexuality ever has come up with a definition of unalienable rights.
Now, we know that that's in the Constitution, but isn't it a theological concept that secular people would find very hard to absorb and
some may
confront?
Some may. But here in the Goodridge decision in Massachusetts, it was declared that same-sex marriage is a basic or fundamental right, in parallel to John Adams's use of unalienable rights. We have a battle between rights defined by human government versus rights defined by the one true Creator. Now, the whole basis for prosperity in this nation is unalienable rights given by our Creator, that life, liberty, and property, which includes the power to pursue happiness, comes from above. And because it does, we are only free to the extent that we honor.
Now let me push back a bit here, John, for a second. It seems to me that somehow in our 21st century North American culture, we have gone beyond that kind of language to a more secular paradigm where people speak of fundamental rights more from an ethical, philosophical point of view, with God sort of being totally out of the picture. So that I think for a gay person, for a humanistic individual, the concept of human rights belongs more to the dimension of, philosophical argument, something that we have kind of because of our dignity as human beings, not because we're creatures of God or anything like that. We have a right to claim. And also in the spirit of fairness, if others have certain rights, then we must also have those rights. So in other words, it is much more of a horizontal kind of argument. God doesn't really figure in the whole picture. So my fear sometimes is that Christians, in seeking to engage that struggle, we tend to perhaps or run the risk of missing the point and not striking the center of what...
what is the center?
Well, to me, the center would be precisely when we speak. If we keep speaking of these God-given rights, they will always find a way around that question, and simply say, well, we're not speaking. God doesn't fit in the picture. They will keep God out of it, and and so it then just makes the argument a lot more complex. And we need to just keep bringing it back to what they're speaking about.
I have done forums on mostly Ivy League campuses on this, many other places, with some of the top same-sex marriage advocates in the nation. I have more on doc. I have published this Ministers Affirmation on Marriage. I base it on unalienable rights from the Creator, and not one person has publicly challenged it. In fact, when I was at Smith College with Amy Hunt, who was one of Arlene's colleagues, actually Arlene was to be there that night, but she was ill, so she sent Amy. It came down to the point, and we have this on some YouTube clips, where if we do not have rights above the power of the government to define, take, and give away, and government defines the rights, we descend into might makes right, and the homosexual community will lose. Do you know why? You never know who's going to be in power. What happens if in 30 years the skinheads are in power? You know, we may think
that is a very great possibility.
And we may think that impossible, but who would have figured 30 years ago what's happening now? So what happens is I have shared this language on hundreds of campuses over the years in the face of the most qualified, well-educated skeptics. And do you know something? At the deepest level of their humanity beats the desire to know they're loved by God. It's just that when they see hypocrisy in the church or hypocrisy by Christians or anger toward their persons and not people listening. That's why I started off with loving our neighbors as ourselves across this debate. That is true spiritual power. The demons flee when love is shown for a broken image bearer of God. So unless we know that theological basis, we're not free then to get into the political dynamic. So for example, if we are going to make, and the push is on for a national definition of same-sex marriage being the law of the land, if we are going to address a question like that, we have to go to the deeper definition of what are rights. And all the rights, and I've read Goodridge, I've read Kerrigan, I've read RE marriage cases in California, the three major decisions here. There are other cognate decisions that have come out, and they avoid this. And do you know why? They cannot answer it. They avoid crucial other points, such as immutability. Are you born homosexual or otherwise? They're moving away from that argument because the science is not there. And so when I bring up the issue, and this goes to the deeper thing, I'm not really worried about my rights. Jesus wasn't worried about his rights when he went to the cross. I'm worried about the rights of others. So there I was at Smith College or Harvard or BU or other places like this. I'm arguing for Arlene or Amy's well-being. Their equality, life, liberty, and property are given to them by the one true Creator. If they don't have that, then it becomes might makes right, and they become in danger too.
And that is a concern that I have right now as I see the direction which our country is going, which is that the Constitution, even the American Revolution, absolutely the foundations of this nation, spiritual foundations of this nation, were based on the presupposition that our culture would always be a God-believing culture. Slowly, that foundation has been taken away. So all that we are left with is human interpretations, cultural inclinations, appetites, power, defining the process of this nation. What I see today, the terrifying polarization of our nation, the kind of coming to a screeching halt of dialogue in Washington, suggests to me that really we are facing a huge crisis, which is based precisely on that fact that we no longer have a common ground to speak on. When I look at the Obamacare situation right now, which, as you know, is being debated at this moment in the Supreme Court, I read the comment of one of the presenters, which said, and this is on the side against Obamacare, said, I cannot understand how these justices cannot see with absolutely obvious clarity that the Constitution prohibits this kind of approach. Obamacare is absolutely unconstitutional. And then at the same time, the liberal side was saying the same thing. You know, they're very sure that this is constitutional and that it's precisely based on that inalienable rights of people for, you know, happiness and healthcare and so on and so forth. So here we have reason being pointed toward the same document and producing diametrically opposite conclusions. And these highly developed minds, legal minds, are divided. You know, there's almost half. It seems that there's a bit of a majority right now in the Supreme Court against Obamacare, but still, you know, it's clear that it's not 100%. So my point being that I think we're reaching slowly the point in America where a lot of these questions are going to be resolved precisely on power, on the basis of power. Who has the most? Who has the best strategy? Has the most money? Has the most resistance and energy, and not necessarily on, you know, the arguments of truth and light. Of course, as Christians, we believe that truth will ultimately prevail.